Our guest today is Aditya Rohit Shah, Indian classical vocalist, a young man who has really blended very well Indian classical music and technology. We are going to talk to him about his journey in Indian classical music. Rohit, welcome to our studio.
It's nice to be here, Upendraji.
Excellent. And for the first time I listened to you was at Rag Rang program in
Yes.
Lexington a few months ago. And I watched the audience reaction to your singing, and I was myself totally mesmerized by your landing on the perfect notes, your control of voice.
The blessings go to my gurus for that.
Excellent.
Kudos, yeah.
So, before we get into the interview, let's have one classical vocal rendition from you right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is morning time, so I think Rag Bhaira would be perfect.
Okay. Excellent. Good. Fantastic. Yes. So now you moved to US in 2004.
Yes, yes.
And how old you were there at the time?
I think I was 10 or 11.
Okay.
We had also come for a bit in 2003
Okay.
to just see how it felt.
Okay.
And then in 4, my parents decided that that was the right move.
Okay.
At time.
Now, when did you got interested in Indian classical music?
It's an interesting question you ask. It was quite against my will as a child in Pune. My parents were committed that I should go into Indian classical music. My brother is an Indian classical flutist and a doctor, and so he learned from Pandit Arvind Gajendra Gadkarji. So watching him, they said our second son should also be in this. I didn't want to do it at all at that point, and I didn't know what was good for me. So they took me to Sri Sanjay Kadam, who was a disciple of the Gwalior Gharana, and he taught me some basics. He taught me tabla, and he taught me how to appreciate the music. But seriously, I got into Indian classical music in terms of Gharanedar Talim in 2004 and 5 in Tampa under the Pandit Jasraj School of Music.
So now, so when you moved to Florida and then you start learning here, right?
Yeah, in Gharanedar, like seriously in terms of focusing on one specific style, the Mewati Gharana.
And how challenging it was for you?
I would say that definitely there are a lot of challenges on this path, particularly if we think about the fact that I wasn't as familiar as I could have been with the language because I had only had a few years in India. So I knew Hindi, but we're talking about Braj Bhasha, which is classical Hindi. And a lot of the emotions expressed in that were not ones that I was immediately familiar with. So that was some of the higher level challenges, just understanding what I'm singing. And then of course, there were other challenges in terms of like learning technique and in just learning to sit down for several hours without moving my feet. But I think my gurus were very loving, Pandit Radharaman Kirtane and Pandit Ratamohan Sharma, and my Bade Guruji, Sangeet Martan, Pandit Jasraji. They were very loving, they were very patient, and they were strict and they expected a lot, but they gave me a chance to make mistakes and grow, and that made it easier.
So very interestingly you mentioned the emotions that and also the language, and how important these emotions and language are in Indian classical vocal music?
It's an interesting question you ask, and I know why you ask it, because many times it feels like when we listen to vocalists we don't quite understand what they're saying. It gets, the alap sort of overrides the words.
Sure.
In our Gharana's case, in Mewati Gharana, we are sticklers for the words. And I know this because I mispronounced one word once, and Bade Guruji let me have it. Because he's like, every word is important. That's the composer's intent. And if you can convey the essence of the words while also staying true to the rag, that raises the quality of the whole experience.
Okay. Now, give us one example of that, where really you perfect the emotions and the language together in your singing?
That's a great
I know I'm
thing.
putting on this.
Oh, no,
right?
no,
See
no,
if you
no.
can.
Yeah, so actually in Rag Bhairav, there's a famous composition by my Bade Guruji called Mero Allah Meherban. Mero Allah Meherban, Mero Allah Meherban, कोई बिगाड़ सकत नहीं तेरो, कोई बिगाड़ सकत नहीं तेरो, मन लीजे तू ठान मेरो अल्लाह मेहरबान, मेरो अल्लाह मेहरबान. So in that, the whole essence comes out that मेरो अल्लाह मेहरबान, कोई बिगाड़ सकत नहीं तेरो, मन लीजे तू ठान. And it's Bade Guruji's composition that he composed when I think he was 19 or 20. He composed this. And the whole essence is that there's bhakti bhav. Allah mero Allah meherban. So that has to come out. It's not just an exercise where, the last line is Man leje tu taan mero. You could sing it like taan mero, but that would be purely mechanical. You have to give it the soul. Man leje tu taan mero Allah meherban. So bringing that up.
So now we'll come back to the classical music part, but I also want to weave in here your background and a little bit can talk about your work at HubSpot. HubSpot has been one of the top, cutting edge, marketing technology company here.
It's a great company.
There. So what you do there and how that syncs with the music?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think what I was attracted to by HubSpot was just the openness of the people there. I was talking to a number of different companies at the end of my time at Dartmouth, thinking about what I wanted to do going forward. And HubSpot, I came to that place, and one of the first questions that was asked me in an interview is, what makes you passionate? And I talked about music, and we listened to music right there in the interview.
You sang there in the interview?
A little bit.
Okay.
My manager knows how I sing. He enjoys Indian
Okay.
music, so at that time he was listening to it.
Okay, and your manager is Indian or Indian?
No,
okay.
he's actually Turkish American.
Okay.
So there is an ancestral connection there in some way.
Sure.
And so I remember just being impressed by that openness of the company culture to accept diversity, really to embrace it. And I think there are a number of things that are common between people who pursue like Indian classical art forms and technology. One is that there's a lot of attention to detail and a lot of granularity in the thought process. So it's not just that you're performing something to please.
So in the thought process, of course, when we do business, we are working. There has to be clarity in thought process.
Yes.
And you mean that same clarity is in the classical music as well?
Yeah. It's a very intentional act of performance in Indian music. Even though there are emotions, and the performer is expected to control and manifest those emotions in the performance, there's a plan. There's a thought out process that, this rag unfolds in this way, and I want to do justice to it. And within that, I will bring out my individual flavor. Same thing as a consultant, as a sales consultant. I have to be on the call, and there's a plan to help people understand what they should do to make their business better. But throughout all of that, I have my own flavor, my own personality that comes off through the call, with which I build rapport and friendships with the customers I work with.
So if you can a little bit highlight more about the coding of Indian classical music, and as well as coding of work at HubSpot.
Yeah,
or what you do.
No, absolutely. So while I'm not a developer myself, when you are at a company like HubSpot, inevitably you start learning. And so I worked in a role in which I got to learn a lot about front-end development. And so I think the way people think about programming and writing code, that way of thinking is quite similar to the pattern recognition that's used for Indian classical musicians. So when it comes to identifying a rag within the first 5 or 10 seconds of hearing it, or whether it comes to thinking about how rags fit together as puzzle pieces in a concert at large. All of that has to do with the same way of thinking that programming sort of uses. And you can see this, that I'm not the only one in a tech space who is interested in Indian classical music, who's pursuing it. There are a number of great artists in the United States, and so I think there is some sort of connection there that should be explored.
Sure. Now, in Boston, I think you are the youngest, one to, I saw at least here in Boston, to perform the vocal classical music at the professional stage, which was done by Ragrang. That was your first performance before a large audience in Boston, or you had done it before?
I'd given a full concert for KHMC in 2012. I was invited by the Carnatic Hindustani Music Circle. So yes, I guess large audience, I guess you could say yes. There was, I think, 100, 150 maybe at the KHMC. It was like a baitak.
Okay.
And that was very great. That was my first introduction to Boston audiences. But yes,
the Lexington Heritage Museum was the
it was probably the first time I was in front of like a full crowd.
Okay. How did that happen?
So actually, it was interesting. Shekharji got in touch with me through LearnQuest.
Shekhar Shastri.
Yes, Shekhar Shastri of Ragrang.
Sure.
He got in touch with me through LearnQuest. So I was teaching at LearnQuest, and he met me at that time, and he said, "Hey, we should maybe have you as part of this concert." And so he got in touch with me, and I came to one of the practices, and it's just that was it. There was just 2 or 3 meetings, and we knew we clicked.
And what do you teach at LearnQuest?
At LearnQuest, I teach Hindustani vocal music.
Okay.
In the tradition that my gurus have taught me, which is Mewati Gaiki.
And say classical.
It is, yes. It's classical music. Although, I love all genres. I genuinely do. And my Guruji always, he tells me I should be inspired by other genres as I listen to them. So I encourage my kids, if they want to sing something else, they should. But they should also learn classical music because there's a root in their heritage they should be proud of.
Now, for many people, classical music can be very intimidating, whether you want to learn or, I don't understand. Or for some people, it can be very fascinating. This is what they want to do that. Has that crossed in your mind that you want to do something else than classical music? Like, say, Bollywood singing or something?
I personally am not that interested in doing other genres as seriously as classical music. Like, I have no problem with experimenting and learning because every genre has so much to teach. And, Bollywood singing is very difficult. People try to make
Have you tried any Bollywood song in Boston or something?
I have. Back in the day in Tampa, I used to partake in these competitions like Voice of Tampa and this and that. And that time I used to sing Bollywood songs.
Okay.
But
any of our favorite Bollywood songs?
I mean, there's a song I don't fully. Chand sifarish jo karta hamari deta wo tumko bata sharmo haya ke parde gira ke करनी है हमको खता. That song is fun. जिद है अब तो है खुद को मिटाना होना है तुझ में फना. So there's a song, and I apologize, I don't remember all of the words, but it was very interesting.
So now, what about the students you teach? They're really interested just in the classical music, or they just want to make the classical music as a base and then do something else? What type of students? What is their reaction? So
I think they're seriously interested, is the take I get. I mean, some of the kids I'm teaching are 8 and 9 years old, and I'm teaching them right now how to recognize ragas and notes. And I treat it like a superpower. If you hear a note and you can tell what that note is and do notation without having to be told what they are, that's a unique skill. I am also learning, more like Bollywood type of singing with Pradeep Shukla at Learn.
Oh, yeah. So I go once a Wednesday, and he also asked me to, get the notes correct and, But somehow I cannot figure it out which note is what. Is there any way you can give me a quick lesson of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. So once we establish a note, like sa, then you always want to think in terms of that note. So if I sing, so sa is going to be here. Sa, and then if I sing another note like and I ask you to identify it right there, then in your head, the trick is to realize that the tanpura is on. We don't have one on right now.
Sure.
Like, and then think, sa re ga, and essentially you sing the notes out loud and you find it that way.
Okay.
And so that process of finding that note becomes quicker and quicker over time, to the point at which it takes almost no time at all at some point.
Oh.
And so my kids, I mean, I'm working with them now where quietly in their heads they sing the notes until they hit the right one.
Okay.
And then they tell me, this is Komalda.
Okay. Excellent.
And so it's teaching them and making it a game, because it's supposed to be fun.
Sure.
Like sometimes classical music, I think you said it, people think it's intimidating, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's because there's been so much propaganda about how much respect we ought to give it. Yes, respect is due to the tradition, but at the end of the day, it's an artistic tradition. It's meant for human joy, and I think that should be the hallmark of teaching or performing classical music, is spreading joy.
So, what advice you will give to young kids, for example, who wants to learn music, like
Who learn classical music in
classical
particular?
music, particularly?
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
I would say.
How do we start?
Yeah.
Let's put it how.
Just to begin in classical music,
Yeah.
I would say find a teacher that inspires you, or find someone whom you listen to and you were very impressed by, and you said, "I want to sing like that." That jolt of inspiration is the first thing. That's what will get you through the beginning of learning, which is very difficult, in the sense that you have to learn how to sit. It comes down to your posture, your breathing. And then it comes to actually identifying the notes and thinking in terms of ragas, which is an entirely different process. So all of that, you need someone you're inspired by and that you trust. And so find a good guru, first of all, and that's
Excellent. Now, you said that some of your students you were teaching, they're 7, 8, 9-year-olds.
Yeah.
Do you have any older kids as well, or older students?
I do. I don't know if I'd call them kids, because
Okay.
my older students are older than me.
Okay, how old are they?
One of the individuals, Mr. Anil Soni,
Okay.
I think is in his 50s.
Okay.
I have other students that are in their 30s and 40s.
So how is it to teach them? How they take you?
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They're good sports. They love learning and they take it seriously. Despite having a full schedule with work, it's something I'm learning. I've been working for a little over a year now, but that balance is not easy. But they balance that, and then they make time, and they're committed. And they come in, and I appreciate that, because I really don't believe there's any age to be a great vocalist. And I mean, the living proof is my Bade Guruji, who is in his late 80s and is performing like a superhuman, even at this age. So
And where is he based? Where is he?
Mumbai.
Mumbai.
Bade Guruji is based in Mumbai, but he belongs to the world. He comes to America for many months a year. I meet him in Pennsylvania every year at our annual Shibir. And he also, sometimes he comes to Tampa. He travels around, and so there's a lot of opportunity to catch him.
Excellent. So now, in you coming back to you, you got interested in classical music in India.
Yes.
And then you move here, 10, 12-year-old.
Yeah. Yes.
Like that. So how many hours roughly you think you practice as a kid, and how much time you spend in practicing and learning music today?
That's a great question, and I think back when I was with my gurus, I would make it a point to practice as much as I could. And even today, when I'm off of work, in my apartment, I got it in such a way where we actually have some free area on one side of our apartment. So if I sit in that direction and sing, it won't bother anyone. So the answer is as much as I can, because really 24 hours is not enough for me.
Give me a number.
On
average.
On average, I would say today I try and aim for at least 3 to 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yes. So that means if I wake up before work, and if I have time, even if it's 30 or 40 minutes, I'll do Rag Bhairav. And it not only calms me down and gets me ready for work, but it also means that it is also my work as a musician. I don't regard it as being secondary to the other work I put in. It deserves the same kind of attention. So I would.
So
say
is Bhairav your favorite raga? Or?
It's the first raga I learned.
Okay.
And it definitely has a special place in my heart. But ragas are so fantastic, all of them, that it's hard to just pick one favorite one and anoint it.
So what is so unique about Rag Bhairav? For a common man like me, for example. Right. You tell me.
Rag Bhairav, it is ancient, first of all. So the melodic chromosome, if you will, or the DNA of Rag Bhairav is embedded, I think, definitely in the psyche of every Indian, if not around the world. There's मोहे भूल गए सावरिया, भूल गए सावरिya. It's a Lata song, which is based entirely on Rag Bhairav, is one of the famous examples that people think of. But there's so many other pieces, and even the general, the tone of Rag Bhairav, you find in Middle Eastern music, you find in European music, you find all over the world, scattered in the different parts of the world. And so it really is a universal rag. Whether people recognize it as Bhairav or not is another question. But I would say as someone who may not be familiar with the intricacies of classical music, even if someone doesn't know, they can still fall in love with the rag and be happy knowing that their ancestors 1,000 years back were listening to those very same notes and having that same sense of awe and wonder. So it's a connection to our past, quite literally.
Excellent. So you were settled your family settled in Florida.
Yes.
And then you come to New England to Dartmouth.
Yeah.
And when was that?
That was, I was class of 2015, so I started in 2011 as a freshman there. And yeah, it was a beautiful campus, and I visited with my parents, and they were terrified of the weather because it's very cold.
New England, yes.
Oh yeah, and before Florida, I was in Pune, so the contrast could not be. I mean, I was going to the tundra, so to speak, but I felt at home at the campus, and there was actually an Indian temple at the campus, a Saraswati Mandir, and a couple of the professors did puja every day and every Friday, and so there's a robust Indian community there, and at the same time, there's a very loving community at large that was accepting of diversity.
Now, off the camera, you were telling me about a thesis you wrote about Indian classical music.
Yes.
That is the longest title I have heard of in the thesis. So if you can repeat the title of the thesis and tell us about that.
Yeah, I can. My brother makes fun of it. The Transnational Modern Understanding of Indian Art Music, Decoding the Politics of Hegemony, Provenance, and Indian Classical Nationalism.
Okay, say that one more time slowly.
The Transnational Modern Understanding of Indian Raga Music. Now I'm remembering. Decoding the Politics of Hegemony, Provenance, and Indian Classical Musicological Nationalism, which in basic terms what it means is hegemony is about power dynamics. So during our time when we were colonized by the British, there were very definite power struggles between Indian classical musicians and writers and British writers who were writing about Indian classical music. They used to argue with each other all the time. So that's about the power struggle. Provenance is the question of what came first or who created something first. And so a lot of people like such as Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande, who's a great theoretician of Indian music, he thought a lot about where did Indian music start? And so I looked into those questions. Where did Indian music start? And then musicological nationalism is about India going towards its independence at that time. And it was not only were we constructing a national identity, we were constructing a national musical identity at that time. And so I looked at these questions, that music is a world unto itself, but it operates within these streams of intellectual argumentation and understanding. And those streams of intellectual struggle formed Indian classical music as we know it today. And that's something I investigated.
And I had never heard of this, that this topic can be explored in a serious academic research and things.
Yes.
Have you thought about converting this into a book or doing some more research on that topic?
I have. In fact, my initial plan when I was going to graduate Dartmouth was to go into a PhD program. And I was talking to my professors about exploring some opportunities there. And it's definitely something I'm looking forward to doing in the future. I am academically interested in it as well, Indian music. I think our tradition deserves to be represented in academia and to be respected as an equal of the Western canon too. We have our own classical tradition that's centuries old, and I think it deserves that representation.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about passion.
Yes.
And it seems that you were very passionate about Indian classical music.
Yes, absolutely.
And so in general, how do you look at passion for things we do in life? Not necessarily in music, but let's say start with music.
Right.
And how important the passion is.
I mean, it's difficult to overstate the importance of having something that drives you. I think I think passion is what makes us human. It's what makes us want to strive for something bigger than ourselves. And I think passion, like pursuing a passion, such as it can be art, it can be photography, it can be data. A lot of people are really interested in data science or anything else. Having something that you strive for that forces you to grow, I think is so important, and it's something I've benefited from. I mean, I can definitely say that pursuing Indian classical music has made me a better person, and has made me feel more connected to both my parents, my heritage, and my gurus, and my friends and family. So passion is what, for me, makes me who I am, and I think that's true for anyone else who loves something so deeply.
And I think that's what it stuck to me about earlier you said during the interview is that for you there is no difference between music and your work. It's, you look at the same thing.
Absolutely.
Now, how do you look as far as you are concerned in the next 5 or 10 years? Your plans?
Put me on the spot here.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, it would be wonderful to continue performing as much as possible, and also to do academic research. So I want to be performing, I want to do academic research, and I still want to keep working for HubSpot.
Okay.
So I have a very sort of convoluted plan for how I want to do all three of those things, but I'm passionate about all three, and I enjoy it, and I feel like in today's world, what I've learned from other people in my generation and the generation before is that if you put your mind to it, you can find the time to do it.
Have you given any performance at HubSpot?
Well, so they've actually been trying to
Okay.
set it up, and they've been trying to do it for months. The dates wouldn't match sometimes,
Okay.
or there something or the other would come up. But yes, they're very fascinated by Indian classical music, and I think in the future I probably will. Soon
Okay.
enough.
Excellent. Now, before we end the interview, just wanted to just sing something, maybe again, let's go back to Rag Bhairav again.
Okay.
And just say one more, a little bit.
Yeah,
Something like
absolutely,
that.
absolutely. There's another piece that my Guruji taught me actually. Okay, so I'm gonna, let's see how this works. Okay. Adidev Shiva Shankar, Adidev Shiva Shankar, Mahakala Krishneshwara, Mahakala Krishneshwara, Maharudra Kanakeshwara, Maharudra Kanakeshwara, Adidev Shiva Shankara, Adidev Shiva Shankara, Adidev Shiva Shankara.
Before I go, I have to ask you one more question. Just came to my mind while you were singing. The music also expresses happiness, neutrality, sadness. In classical music, is there something where you can really express complete sadness?
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, there's some very intense rags, such as Jaunpuri and Multani in particular. Just the feeling of the rag, you can feel it. So like Jaunpuri, for instance, you can think of it like this, like Payal ki janakar baraniya, Payal ki janakar baraniya, Jan jan baje kaise mori पिया से मिलन को चाहूं अब मैं पायल की जनकार बरनिया.
Beautiful, absolutely.
There's a lot of pathos in that, and sometimes it can get very, very emotional, even with rags like Marwa and stuff, where literally at the end of Marwa, the audience feels restless. Because
Do you have any example of that?
Yeah. So, मारो कवन काज कवन देश चढ़िए मारो कवन काज कवन देश चढ़िए मारो कवन काज कवन देश चढ़िए मुँह पे बरा मारो कवन काज कवन कवन मारो कवन काज. So in that, if you notice, we avoid the sa a lot. Da ga re ni da ma da ni re ga ma ga re ga ma da ma re re sa. So the sa is like an afterthought, and the whole point is that resolution of tension should come after the audience has like felt the intensity of the emotion. And I mean, you can't do justice to a rag so large like Marwa within a span of minutes right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's some of these emotions really compel me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So one question for you is, you are young, budding Indian classical vocalist. How do you look at the future of Indian classical music?
Well, I have to say it's exceptionally bright. I mean, just, I hear people saying these things like classical music is dying, and it's not true. There's no evidence for that. These are just platitudes, In reality, more people are listening to Indian classical music today than they have ever in the past. So I went to Sawai Gandharva Festival. There were thousands of people in the audience. It was packed. And so many of them were from my age group or younger. So to me, when they say Indian classical, in terms of what the future is going to be, it's brighter. I think Indian classical music is not only going to be classical to India, but my dream is that it's thought of as classical music around the world. So it's that label of Indian classical music is going to be around the world.
And what makes you so optimistic about it?
Well, I mean, every time people come in contact with Indian classical music, whether they're Indian or American or European, they're bewitched by it. They're entranced by the thought process. And it's the amount of work that has been put into Indian classical music to make it a complete art form is just, it's not something that I can easily define. And when so much work is put into something, and people are doing a good job of propagating it, like my gurus are, and I'm trying to now, within my age group and within the new generation, many are, there's no question that it will meet success.
What about the technology? How the technology is playing a role in promoting?
Oh yeah, it's playing
our listening.
Yes, that's true. Listening and promoting, in both respects, it plays a huge role, because when you think about like these mediums, so if you've heard of the Darbar Festival, for instance, in London, they're using high quality videography to promote Indian classical music. So their videos have really good sound and image quality, and it shows people that Indian classical music is part of the HD generation. Indian classical music takes to the HD generation with pride, and so a lot of these efforts are being made. Indian Raga is another Boston startup that's doing that.
Sure.
I worked with them as an intern for almost 2 years.
Oh, excellent.
And many other companies and ventures are really bringing Indian classical music to the forefront with art. I launched a music video recently that was also based on the same idea of bringing high quality videography to Indian music. And people have been doing it, like Srimati Pandita Durga Jasrajji from my own Gharana. She's done an incredible job with art and artists in India, and promoting Idea Jalsa, that program that showed Indian classical music to the world at large. They have millions and millions of viewers, and so I think the trajectory is up and up and up.
Aditya, thank you very much for coming. It was such a wonderful,
It was a pleasure.
nice and pleasure to talk to you, really.
Absolutely.
And all the best at the Harvest Spot as well as your classical music career.
I really appreciate it. It's important to know that I have the blessings of community elders such as you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.